Hello and welcome to the first of the CODP Photoshop online support tutorials. Over the next few tutorials, we're going to be going over a few concepts in Photoshop that aim to provide context for what you're going to be doing. I'm not going to be spending too much time on basic editing steps such as image sizing and image repair, but rather concentrating on connecting your photography technique with your Photoshop options. Just remember, if you need to do too much to an image to get it to look decent, then rather go and take it again. Make sure you're getting the right image information at the time of capture. So we're going to be looking at Photoshop from the perspective of image enhancement, not trying to resuscitate photographs that don't really have anything to offer. This said, let's take a quick look at the user interface in order to get a sense of what the main components are in Photoshop. Okay, let's start at the top menu bar. Amongst the usual suspects of what you'd expect to find on the Programs menu, such as File, Help, Window and View, you'll find the three most relevant divisions. These are Image, Layer and Select. This is the spinal cord of Photoshop, particularly from a photographic editing point of view. Even though you will progress and use these menus less and less because you're going to be using keyboard shortcuts and accessing different parts of these concepts from different parts of the program, that is still the foundation of what you're going to be doing to the image. Okay, in the File drop-down, you're going to find largely administrative kind of functions, opening, closing, basic file management and access kind of stuff. In the Edit drop-down, you're going to find forward, back, cut, paste, all of which follow common keyboard shortcuts that you'll find in other programs, but you'll really access these from the actual menu. Below that, you'll find a few image transformation options. Again, you'll quickly become accustomed to the keyboard shortcuts. In the Image drop-down, you'll find options for setting up the mode, such as RGB CMYK, and these are mostly concerning the output settings. You'll also find adjustment options in the Fly tab, and here we start seeing more crucial image kind of options. The first set concern image tonal values, brightness and contrast. The second set concern color and the interpretation of color. The third, fourth and fifth set are largely combinations or interpretations of the first two sets. In the remainder of the Image drop-down, you'll also find auto options. You're never going to use them. In the set below, you will see there are image size and orientation options. Again, really a concern when you're ready to output your image. Below this, there are options which extend beyond Photoshop normal usage. This makes adjustments our first main pillar in Photoshop. When we get to the Layers tab, we might need to take a quick pause to get a firm grasp on what the layers do and how they function in Photoshop. Layers are by far the most important component in Photoshop. There will be quite a few tutorials dedicated specifically to layers, but for now, imagine that layers are basically stacked photographs one on top of the other. You can change the density or opacity to reveal information which is below, or you can change the way that these layers interact with each other. The grey-white checkerboard you're seeing is used as an indicator that all the upper layers have little or no density. This is not part of your image, don't worry. So the top part of the layers drop-down deals with the creation of new, duplicate, or the deletion of layers. Again, get used to the shortcuts. Below this set, there are 7 more sets depending on your version and setup of Photoshop. These are mostly different functions that you can perform with layers. Most of these you will access with a double click, right click, or keystroke click, or within the Layers palette as you get used to Photoshop. So Layers is our second main pillar of Photoshop. The next tab is the Select tab. Again, let's take a very broad view at what this means. In Photoshop, you can select areas of an image so that you can hide, delete, or alter them in a specific way. That means you can make alteration to selected areas or see only parts of the layer above or below. Added to this is the fact that these selections can be made with hard or soft edges. As with layers and adjustments, you will soon be doing selections through tools in the toolbar and keyboard shortcuts. There are many other ways you can be using this, but for now, this is the third main pillar of Photoshop. The next item on our top menu bar is the Filter tab. Within each of these filters, there are flight options to variations of each. Some of these filters are extremely useful, some less so. Some are quirky and fun, and there are a few that are entirely pointless and serve little other than to attempt to obscure poor photographic technique. Depending on your version and setup, you may have an Analysis and 3D tab. For now, we're going to leave these alone as they go beyond the scope of general photography. If we get a chance later, we might investigate them. The next tab is View, with the first set of options dedicated to proofing, screen setup, and sometimes pixel aspect ratios. This is more relevant to video than photography. The next set is oriented at how you're viewing your image within the user interface window, based on zoom factor and a few other alternatives. Again, keyboard shortcuts and other user interface shortcuts will be used rather than the menu tab, as it's just too slow. The sets below this are mainly dedicated to peripheral viewing options such as rulers, guidelines, and their setup. Okay, the second last tab is the window option. This drop-down controls two main setup options. The first is a series of presets for the user interface. As there are so many tools and palettes and options in Photoshop, a quick setup can be useful. If you don't use this, then default to a more manual setup. But you should be altering your workspace quite often, or either you won't be using certain tools, or you will have a very cluttered workspace. Below this is the palette control. These are sets of functions held within a palette that floats on your work area. You can drag them around, close them, and minimize. The palettes that are currently floating on your work area are indicated with a tick icon. Notice that some of the active palettes are stacked behind each other, but only the active palette is ticked in the window drop-down. Make sure you have layers, adjustments, and history clicked, as you're going to be using these quite a lot in the next few tutorials. To reset all the alterations, you can just click on Window, Workspace, Color and Tone Preset, as this is quite a good standard to start on. The next tutorial will cover the toolbar section of the user interface.